Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one that I didn't realize I needed to make until I was reminiscing, thinking about the past year, because Oliver's almost a year old. So I was planning his birthday party, and then I was getting nostalgic, and I was thinking, hi honey. I was getting nostalgic, and I was thinking about like the whole birth experience and how like crazy that is, that was almost a year ago now. And I realized there was a part of our story that I never shared, that I never said, that I never voiced out loud. So this video is going to be about the missing pieces of the whole labor and delivery story. What I have shared online already was inducing labor, like at home, because I did go into labor the night of his due date. Everything that I did to like induce labor naturally at home worked. Something worked. I'm not sure what worked. I think it was the walking, but it worked. Anyways, and then I shared our birth story of this little guy, but I didn't share what happened in the hospital. I kind of just like stopped that story right after he was born. And then that was like the end of the video. And then I shared my first 24 hours with him at home. But we didn't get to bring him home for 2 days, almost 2 days. I guess a day and like a half-ish. We didn't get to bring him home. So that day and a half of what happened was never explained, never shared, never told. Hi, Oliver. Hey. He's just gonna keep trying to get to the camera this entire video. Anyways. For those of you who haven't seen the other videos kind of discussing this little section of our life, I'm going to briefly go over it. So on Oliver's due date, which was September 20, 2020, I wanted to meet him. I was really excited to meet him, as I'm sure you guys know the feeling of. So I did all of the things that I could possibly do to induce labor, and I vlogged the process. I had spicy foods, I had pineapple, I went for long walks, I did my last minute grocery shopping so we'd have food for when Oliver was born. Yeah, I vlogged all of that, and I say in that video that I'm pretty sure it was me going for a long walk that really like kick-started the labor process, because that's what really felt like it did it. So that's what I pinpoint the situation to. And then I was at home in labor for over a day, and I kept calling my midwife saying, oh, I think I'm ready to go into the hospital, and they were saying, oh no, not yet, because I wasn't I don't remember if it's 411 or 511, but I wasn't there yet. So they said, Ollie. So they said, don't worry, don't come in yet, just wait, just wait. And then I woke up in so much pain the night of the 21st. So I started laboring the night of the 20th. Not until the night of the 21st was I like, okay, I need to go to the hospital. Like, he is coming whether I like it or not. And I was in so much pain. I started throwing up. It was not a good experience. Well, it wasn't a bad experience. I'm happy I got to labor and do everything naturally, but I was obviously in pain because birth is painful. And I started throwing up. I was just like so like frazzled, as I'm sure you can expect. I wasn't really prepared for what the birth experience would be like, but I go into more detail about that in my birth story video. And then I kind of just leave a blank hole, and then I go home and I have my first 24 hours with Oliver, which were magical, having him at home holding his tiny little body, because now he's this big little gremlin. Hello? Are you causing mischief? You are. You are. Yeah, so let me go over what happened in that little missing time frame. I pushed Oliver out September 22nd, 2020. That is his birthday. I believe it was at 3 in the morning. And he came out perfect. There were no worries, there were no issues. He was amazing. He's still amazing. You're my little boy. So I didn't get an epidural. I didn't end up needing any stitches or anything down there. It was as easy as it could possibly be for us, which I am so grateful for. But one thing that didn't happen, because I wanted to get an epidural, but everything was happening too quickly. And I was also positive for the strep something, a bacteria. While you're 9 months pregnant, they'll swab your vagine area, and you're either positive or negative for a bacteria. And I was positive for it. And what that means is you're supposed to go in early in your labor process to make sure you have an IV in at least 4 hours before you give birth. But from when I got to the hospital, I had Oliver within the hour. So I never had that IV put in, which is why I had to stay at the hospital longer for monitoring, because I was never given those antibiotics that they would have liked to give me. There didn't end up being any problems or anything because of it. But that's just something I feel like I need to mention, because otherwise I would have been able to like leave the hospital like much earlier, like within a couple hours I would have been able to leave. But because I didn't get that IV, I couldn't. So afterwards, they take Oliver, we did like our little skin to skin, and they weigh him, got all of his measurements. I'll have them here from what I remember. And yeah, that's yours. And I remember just being in such like awe, holding him, like, oh my goodness, this is my baby. Like, he's mine, he's real. You're real. You're really mine. Don't hit me. Yeah. And that was amazing. And Abdullah got to hold Oliver, and he was holding him so awkward. And this was all in the delivery room while I pushed the placenta out, which is almost more painful than delivering a baby. Yeah, the placenta hurt. That hurt a lot. I don't know why, but that was miserable. After that, I just remember them giving me juice boxes and saying like, oh, drink your juice. I wasn't able to eat anything just because I couldn't myself personally do it. They were telling me like, oh, eat this, have some Jello, do whatever. And all I could, think about consuming was liquids. So I was just having apple juice, and that was about it. They asked me to use the washroom before they wheeled me into like a actual room where you can stay. The lighting is going in and out. Sorry, it's a rainy day, so the clouds are all over the place. Anyways, they asked me to pee. I went to the washroom and I just sat on the toilet and I could not pee. I don't know why I couldn't pee, but it just like burned. So they wheeled me to the room anyways in a little wheelchair, and then Oliver was in his little cot and they wheeled him in. Abdullah got to push him. Or was Abdullah pushing me? I don't know. He was pushing one of us, and then our midwife was pushing the other one of us. And we got to the room, and they put Oliver just in between us, and they said, whenever you do pee, like ring the little bell and let your nurse know. I really don't know why that is a thing that happens, but that happens. They really care about when you go pee for the first time. Because I didn't have the IV, they did have us checked in on every 4 hours. I think Oliver was checked. They'd come in, and then after a day of that, they let us leave. While we were at the hospital though, that was like our first little experience with this guy. Yeah. And he had the grossest poos. He had little meconium black poos. I remember Abdullah changing Ollie's diaper for one of the first times. I think it was Abdullah's first time changing Oliver's diaper. And there was just so much black goo everywhere, like everywhere. I don't know where it was coming from, Ollie, but you had so much black goo inside of you, so much of it, so much of it. And I don't think I changed a single diaper while we were in the hospital. I just kept picking him up to try and feed him. He was cluster feeding at the time, so just like constantly I felt like he was attached to me all the time. And I got in trouble from the nurse twice because I fell asleep while holding Oliver, and he'd fall asleep like on my chest, and we would be laying there, and they'd come in and they say, oh, you can't do that. Yeah, that's when it started, because then I kept co-sleeping until now. I'm still co-sleeping a good chunk of the night, but I can't not be near this little guy, and I feel completely safe while co-sleeping. Anyways, that happened. The food in the hospital was gross, and my midwife, after 24 hours, came to do Ollie's 24-hour like checkup, which, because he was born at 3 in the morning, I think they came in at 12, so not at 3 a.m. because that is no one was going to be awake then. So they came in as close to 24 hours as they could because we needed our midwife's approval before we could leave the hospital. Hi. And she came in. Her name was Mona. And Mona did all of his measurements. They measured his head, how much he weighed, how he was doing, and he was doing great. Ollie, you were doing great. You were doing so well. You were, and you were so tiny. Look at him now and then look at him as a newborn. That's crazy. It's actually crazy. You don't even look like the same kid. I don't even see a resemblance. No resemblance. You're a new baby. And I tried to do like a little impromptu newborn session while we were there because we weren't allowed to have a photographer. And it was still in the middle of like COVID and everything. So I was happy that I even got to have like Abdullah in the room with me, that I got to have him with me through everything, because I know in a lot of places that wasn't the case and you weren't allowed to have people with you while you were giving birth. And I'm so grateful that I did, but we didn't get to have visitors or, yeah, leave my shirt on. But we didn't get to have visitors, which means we couldn't have like a photographer come, because I would have loved to have like a fresh newborn photo shoot, like the Fresh 48 photo shoot. I would have loved to have that done. I also would have loved to have like a newborn shoot in general. A huge regret, because I didn't realize how short that newborn stage is, and it is so unbelievably short. And then they're like a whole baby, and now he's like a whole toddler. Like, that's crazy. And I really regret not having a professional come in and document those moments for us. I obviously tried and I took as many photos as I could, but it wasn't my top priority. It wasn't the only thing that I was thinking about, because I was also getting used to breastfeeding and things for the first time. Oliver's first breastfeeding session was within like the first hour of him being out of the womb, and he latched really well immediately. I remember them asking like, oh, do you want to speak to a lactation consultant? Do you have any questions? And at the time I had seen so many just like YouTube videos about people sharing their like stories and experiences while breastfeeding that I felt pretty well prepared. I kind of knew what was expected and what was going to happen, so I didn't ask to speak to anybody about it. They showed me the correct way to hold him, which is pretty basic. It was just like, you know, that kind of hold. And Ollie, you can't have it. Look. Ooh, cooking with Cookie. Nom 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 nom. So many cookies. Oh no, only one left. What was I saying? Oh, I think I was talking about photos. Pictures were scarce. They weren't taken. I have some of just like Oliver and Abdullah, and then there's some of me and Oliver, but there's barely any like family photos, which is what I'm sad about. That's what I wish we had, was just more family pictures. Yeah, so the morning of the 23rd, I thought for sure we're gonna be able to leave the hospital now, because there's no reason. We had his 24-hour appointment with the midwife. We had the approval to leave from her, and they said, okay, leave in the morning. And then in the morning, the hospital got really busy. A bunch of people went into labor. I guess the ward got busy, so there wasn't much opportunity for nurses to come and like assist us, as it was really just a matter of paperwork at that point. So eventually in the afternoon of the 23rd, somebody did bring us paperwork, and Abdullah filled it all out immediately. We got Oliver's like temporary health card and his birth certificate. We got all that paperwork figured out and situated, which the nurse just brings to you, asks you to fill it out, and then they say they'll come check on you in a bit. And a bit for them was a couple hours later, and we had already filled everything out, like taken it to the correct people you need to take it to in the hospital, the people that like file the paperwork. We had it like done, but they came back later and they were like, oh good, like it's finished, da 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 da. They told us like we were really mature. A lot of people just leave the paperwork and they don't fill it out. Why do you keep pulling my shirt down? I just fed you. And that paperwork was filled out, but they said we still couldn't leave the hospital quite yet. Yeah. So me and Abdullah, we asked them to bring us some tea. We made tea, we had our snacks, we watched a movie. We started watching it was a Sherlock Enola Holmes, I think it was called. And I don't remember what we watched after that, but I vividly remember not liking that first movie. And that was the first time that me, Abdullah, and Oliver were cuddling in bed, watching a movie, drinking our tea. And that was wonderful. That was a moment I can never recreate. It'll never be as perfect. That was just so wonderful. Because that was our first time cuddling you as a family. Yeah. And even now, that's just like the best feeling when all three of us are just like cuddling. It's so nice. And Oliver's just getting more and more mischievous, and those moments are far fewer than they used to be. Yeah, you never want to cuddle anymore. And then afterwards, a couple hours later, so we're closer to the evening now at this point, the nurse came in and she said, okay, let's check your car seat. Like, you guys are ready to go. We couldn't figure the car seat out. We needed the nurse to help us like put Oliver into the car seat because the straps, we couldn't figure out how to tighten them. The nurse knew what she was doing. She was like, oh, whatever. And it was literally just like a string at the bottom of the car seat that you pull, and it tightened everything super close to your baby. And Oliver looked so tiny in his car seat. And he outgrew that car seat in like 3 months, but he looked so tiny in that car seat. It was And as we left the hospital, one of the nurses said, like, she made a comment about how young we were and said like she hopes she wouldn't be seeing us soon. And I was offended because, like, why would you say that? I could have more kids if I want to have more kids. What does my age have anything to do with anything? It put me in a bad mood. And then another nurse said, like, oh, don't worry guys, like, you're a lot more mature than a lot of the other parents that come in here. But yeah, I don't know why she said that. That was the only thing that left like a sour taste in my mouth. And then we got to bring Oliver home, and then I vlogged after that point. So I'll leave that vlog linked below, and I will talk to you guys later because Mr. Fussy wants to eat. So I will talk to you guys later. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am excited to have this to look back on in the future.